Okay, number 50. Let's start by dividing by -4. So sine negative theta is going to equal -√3/2. -√3 divided by 2 is -0.866 or 886, something like that. So if you look at the sine curve, -√3/2. Let's see. Should be closer down here. That's going to be at the pi/3s. So if this is pi, this is pi/2, then in quadrant, sorry, 3 pi/2, in quadrant 3, between pi and 3 pi/2, this first one's going to be 4 pi/3. This second one's going to be 5 pi/3. Because sine's equal to sine of negative theta equals -√3/2. So that -√3/2 is a bottom value. But we have sine negative theta. So negative theta actually means that we reflect our graph. And with the negative being with the theta, that actually means we reflect it horizontally. So if the horizontal side of my graph, if I drew that, okay, if I reflect that over the y-axis, then it's going to do that. Okay, so it's if I folded it over the y-axis, the red and the black on the left and the red on the right would match. I mean, assuming I drew it so that they would match. So then in that red curve, I'm going to have different answers than I had in the original black curve. You could also use your even and odd identities. Sine is an odd function, so sine of negative theta is equal to -1 times whatever the sine of theta is. For example, the sine of, which one are we doing? So -3/2. It doesn't matter. Sine of pi over 2 is equal to -1. If I took the sine of negative pi over 2, sorry, sine of pi over 2 is equal to +1. If I did the sine of negative pi over 2, that'd be equal to -1 times the sine of positive. So -1 times 1 is -1. We know sine of negative pi over 2 is -1, so that's true. So that -1 in front means that I also, instead of looking at it as a horizontal reflection, I can look at it as a vertical reflection. So now in my new graph, I'm looking for those same values. So instead of 4 pi over 3 and pi over 3, we're going to be at 1 pi over 3 and 2 pi over 3. So that negative value treats as a reflection. So if you don't do all that with the graph, if you use your unit circle and you get to the point that you know from here that negative theta, when you take the inverse of both sides, inverse sine of negative theta is negative theta, inverse sine -√3/2, all values from 0 to 2 pi, that it's going to be at 4 pi over 3 and 5 pi over 3. Well, now you have a negative theta. So if you divide by -1, I have theta equals -4 pi over 3 and -5 pi over 3. But you want between 0 and 2 pi. So this is where I'd come up with a coterminal answer. So plus 2 pi, plus 2 pi. -4 pi over 3 plus 2 pi is plus 6 pi over 3. Gets you to 2 pi over 3. -5 pi over 3 plus 2 pi or plus 6 pi over 3 gives you positive pi over 3. So I can use my unit circle, think about my inverse, where sine equal to negative root 3 over 2, come up with the fact that that's in quadrant 3 and 4. Recognize that we're talking about the pi over 3 angles, not the pi over 6 angles. So that's 4 pi over 3 and 5 pi over 3. And set that equal to the angle. Well, the angle is negative theta. So then I have to divide both sides by negative 1 and get the coterminal answer. That's if you don't think about it from the graphing perspective. From the graphing perspective, you can draw the sine curve and then do a reflection vertically and look for your negative answers there.